Welcome back to Dalry Models. In this video I'm carrying on with the interior for the Alfa Giulia build. So as you can see here, I've got all of the parts ready. They're the door panels all painted up. Got your seats there, the centre console. Just show some of the details on the painting that I've done on it, and the carbon trim on the inside and everything. There's the seats and your Alcantara effect centre pieces, and then leather and then carbon on it. I think putting it all together and having different shades of black, and it just breaks up the monotony of a fully black interior and doesn't look quite so plain and boring, and adds a bit more realism to it. Steering wheel, if I don't drop it. So you've got the red stop start button that you saw me painting in the last video, and then a few extra details, carbon trim, the silver part. There's quite a lot of detail just gone into that small piece. And then you got the vents, more vents, again detail painted, just add a bit of interest visually to it. And then that's the centre controls and the, I was going to say homemade gear selector. It's modified from the plastic kit, so that I've got the auto box, and then the heater controls, and then the interior tub, which is all flocked up and ready for all the bits to go together with it. So the first thing I'm going to do is the seat belts on the rear seats. So I've got some 2mm black ribbon that I'm going to use for this. I'm just going to cut it roughly to the length that I want. And then I just check my reference material to see where it actually locates. So it's going to go down there. So I'm just going to put a tiny little bit of glue just on that point where I'm going to locate it. You don't want a lot for this. It's not anything that's going to fall off at any point, so it's only a light piece, so you don't want glue oozing out the side, so a tiny little bit is sufficient for this. And just hold that in place, and I'm just going to push it in with another stick just until the glue dries. And don't forget not to use the stick that you put glue on, otherwise it will go in a mess. So that's that side done, so I'm going to do the same for the second side. So I'll cut it to the length I want, and then just being careful how I handle the interior tub piece, because I don't want to damage the flocking with my fingers. So I'm just getting extra cautious with it all being painted and everything now. So again, tiny little bit of glue, and then position it where it needs to be, and then just pushing it down into the glue, and then just holding it long enough just for it to grip. Right. And then after the glue was dried on that, I then go on to the buckles, which, as you can see, I've painted the ends of them black. Just if I left them plain, it just wouldn't look right. If you look at real seatbelt, it would be plastic on that bit, so I just painted them to reflect that. So do the other side now. Just going to carefully position them where I want them. So now that I've got that down there, and their bottom's glued and dried, I can do the top. So I just measured where I want it to be, and then just going to cut it flush. I don't know whether you can see it on the screen, but there's this slot, not all the way through just a groove that the seatbelt would go into, which is where the slot is on the real car. So I've just put a bit of glue just on the end of the fabric, at the end of the ribbon, just to put it into that groove. And then it's not flat onto the seat, and it has a three-dimensional look like the real one would have. And just do the other side. Need a bit more off. You wouldn't have your seatbelt loose like that, it's got tension on it, so just shorten it a bit just to make it a bit more realistic. Again, just a little bit of glue just on the end of it so that it can go into that groove. Right, so that's the back seat belts done. So now I'm going to move on to the front ones. And I made a slight mistake, which I corrected afterwards, with the positioning of this. That I start off by putting it on the back and wrapping it round, and that's not right, which I'll explain later on in the video where it should be. To help if I don't keep dropping it. It's not particularly easy to position it and hold it in place. So get it there, just push it into the glue, and then that should at least hold it there where I want it. Being used to doing styrene cars, this is how you would have to do it on one of those, which is why I did it on this one, and then realised afterwards that it was wrong. Or not wrong, it's just I could do it better. And for some reason this didn't want to glue, it didn't want to hold. So just put it to the side just until it set, and then now that I've done that I can move forward and do the seatbelt on this one. You don't need to see me faffing around trying to get the glue to grip. Come on, it can go in. Come on, there we go. I think the end is frayed slightly. So then I can pull that down. And then position that where it would look naturally sit on the real one. So just putting a tiny little bit of glue there just to hold that buckle, because I don't want the buckle dropping to the floor on this side. It's a little bit fiddly, but to me I think it's worth it. And then once that buckle's in place I can then put some glue at the bottom part and then trim that off later once it's dry. So same again on the second side. Again, all the buckles have been painted in the same way. Right, so that's all the seat bolts done now. So next bit is the speaker grills. So I'm just going to get my knife and just trim these off. And I think the metal on this is quite thin, so I was just trying to be a little bit careful and left a bit excess, or more so than I necessarily needed to, just so it didn't bend when I was cutting it. And then just using my photo etch scissors just to trim the bits off, make it all nice and flush. And then check that it fits properly. So that's gonna look okay in there. So move on to the next one to get all those cut off. I think it's good when you have pieces like this as separate parts, and particularly being photo etch, that it makes painting easier, and with photo etch having a bit of a grill pattern to it, it also adds a bit of realism to the finish of it as well, which ultimately is what we want when we're doing models. So I've just got the small tweeter grills down here, which I don't think you can see very well on the camera. So my go-to super glue now, the Bob Smith's Gold. So I just use that for most things now. So just put a bit in the centre where it wants to be. Then go and get my grill. Like it was made for it. Which it was, obviously. But yeah, with the silver surround on there now, I think it just makes it stand out. There's an option on the car to have an upgraded speaker system, and that would have silver grills over the speakers. But with the silver surrounds and silver grills, I chose to go down this route just to give it some visual difference. And the bit for the tweeter, which doesn't actually fit in the recess of the hole, so hence going over it. It just sits on top like that. So I am particularly liking this kit. There's a lot of nice details and bits that you can bring out, which for a model, it's like I said before, it's what you want, is the details, and so being able to paint things separately is great, which I'll come on to again in the video later on. But even with the door panels, with the door handles, the surrounds for the door handles, the door pulls, you can see there's variations in the colours that I've used to break up the monotony of the black, and it's as the real one would be. Some of it's plastic, some of it's leather, some of it's carbon, some of it's aluminium. So it's just reflecting what you would see in the 1-1, and hope that it looks real enough. Same again on the tweeter, it's going over the surround for it rather than in the recess. I think on the 1-1 it's somewhere in between the recess and the size of the actual grill piece, but for the scale model, it's sufficient. It gives you the visibility of it, or the feel of it. So that's the centre screen for the dash, which I've painted gloss black. And before I painted it, I bent it on the end just to follow the shape, because the bits by the dials curves in. So bent it, then painted it, and then it's ready to fit. They do provide a decal for this, but if the ignition was off, which is how I'm reflecting my build, that screen wouldn't be on and it would just be gloss black. So I've painted it to reflect that. Also, there's only one option as the decal that you would put on it, and it's not what I would have chosen to put on it anyway. The other bits were for the dials, which I didn't see the point of using. It didn't add anything to it, so I just put the decals straight in there and then put some clear coat over them. So next up is the rest of the bits for the dash. So just get my photo etch saw, which you can obviously see, and separating them all off. And just go through them all, and then I can obviously do it as a batch and then clean up afterwards. You do have to take care with the dust from doing this. You don't want to be breathing in the resin dust, so if you are doing this, you should be really wearing a mask to protect yourself, and then make sure it's all cleaned up properly afterwards. So hence me doing it all in one go together. Get rid of the pieces straight into the bin, and then it just makes life a little bit easier for cleaning. You could probably use cutters for this rather than a knife or a saw, but I prefer this because if you use cutters, it's risking something splitting with the resin. So I feel like I've got more control doing it this way. So I've got a damp cloth, and then just wipe the excess away, and then I've got a nice clean bench to carry on. So first bit I'm going to do is the upper vent, and they've provided two in the kit for this, and it's just, I don't know why. I don't think one's particularly any better than the other. Unfortunately, my camera's autofocus decided it didn't want to work for this bit, so it's focused on the mat and not anything else, which I didn't realise at the time of recording. But you've got a centre speaker grill now. I think it's a speaker grill anyway. So I just put a little bit of glue around the edge there, and hopefully you can get an idea of what I'm doing, even if it's not in focus. So just trying to carefully line it up to make sure that it doesn't pick up any glue and then make a mess somewhere else, which would not be good at this point. Certainly don't want to be messing up the dash as I'm putting the final pieces on it, especially on the top where it will be very visible. And then I've got the heater controls. I realised that it wasn't focusing, so there you go. Now you can actually see what's going on. So I like the fact that Alfa Model have put all these pieces as separate as well. It makes painting a lot easier than if it was all moulded into one. It saves on masking large areas and such. So that's a nice snug fit. Get my tweezers to pull it back out, and then I can put some glue in there. Yeah, having the pieces separate to paint is a massive benefit, and they seem to be doing it more and more with their kits, which is a nice touch. And then I've got the side vents to go on, and there is a taper to it, so it's just getting it right so it's got the orientation that I want it to have. On the 1-1, the centre part of the vent is adjustable, but the actual casing on the outside isn't, so I positioned that one wrong and I have to adjust it later on, but because the casing wouldn't be pointing up in the air like that, it'd be going straight. So get it right with that one. I think I'd realised as I was doing this one that I got the first one wrong. So that's how it wants to be, and then I'll go and adjust that one. So now I can move on to the steering wheel and the flappy paddles. So I'm just putting the paddles on the steering wheel loosely, and then the glue that I'm putting into here will hold it sufficiently. You might have noticed, if you're familiar with the kit, that I've not put the indicator stalks on, which I do remember about, and I'll put them on afterwards, so in the next shot you will be able to see them. So just go and fiddle with the steering wheel, because it's a little bit of a loose fit, so it's going to take a little bit more time for the glue to grip it to hold it in place. So I'll just take that off camera to do that. So there you go, that is the dash and the steering wheel and everything all complete. So as I said, the detail painting really brings it to life, and adds a lot of realism to it, or I think so anyway. You could just paint it black and be done with it, but to me that's boring, so it's just my preference. So I think the last bit to assemble is the pedals. So we've got an accelerator pedal, and I like the fact that they've got the slots in them. You just, again, you probably will never see it, but it's a nice touch when you're doing it that you know that it's there, and if somebody ever does manage to get the visibility of it or a glance of it, it'll catch the light maybe and just add something to it. And then a footrest, because this is obviously an automatic. I've just got a slight issue with the flocking, adding an extra layer for making it a little bit more difficult to fit it in place. But it's not an issue, it does go where I want it. Just got to position it, but it also, with it being triangular at the bottom, it keeps wanting to go flat. So now onto my gear selector. So as I said, this is an automatic. The kit comes with only a manual gear selector. So I've modified a styrene piece to match what the 1.1 would have, and then painted it up as it would realistically look. So all the rest of it underneath there is just to hold it while I'm putting it on place, because it just makes it a little bit easier. So get that in there, position it, make sure it's centered and straight. And then once the glue is dry on that, hence a little bit of a step, I can then trim that excess off, make sure it's flush, and then that can go in my centre console. Now with the carbon surround and the silver trim, I think that just finishes it off. So it's another example of Alfa thinking ahead for how people are going to want to build it, and carbon bits being able to do that without affecting the controls or anything like that. So it's again a nice touch. So just a small bead of glue around the edge of that, and then that sits over that, and it's starting to look a bit more finished. So I can put the seats on now. So again, just putting some glue around the edge where it's going to sit. Don't want these to come out, so being that they're going on the flocking, I'm just putting a little bit more glue on that than unnecessarily would need to. I'll get that one done, and then the same again for the second one. And there's a cutout at the bottom of the seat and a corresponding raised bit on the plate, so your seats will only go one way. So that is the interior tub done. That's how the dash is going to actually sit and what it's going to look like. And then you've got your door panels going to fit there. You can see that I've removed the seat belt from the back of the door panel as well, so it's sticking up. And so the dash goes in first and actually glues to the body shell there in that position. So go and get my glue again and just run a bead of it along that ledge. Making sure I don't touch any of the bodywork with the glue stick, because that would be not good. Nice fit in there, and it covers up the little bit of unpainted bit or scratched bit on the back. So there's the door panel going in, and if you can see there where the top of the seat belt is, there's a little bit of a groove on the B pillar, and the seat belt actually comes out of that part, and because it's moulded in, that's why I said earlier that I'd positioned the seat belt slightly wrong. So just put some glue in there, and again you've got this groove in there that slots into, and it's got a corresponding piece on the back, so it will only fit in one position. And then my seat belt goes into that bit where it's supposed to be, and all goes together nicely. So just to speed it up a little bit, I'm going to just put a clamp on that, and then I can do the other side while waiting for that glue to set. So that's going to fit in there. Just checking that it's not going to cause any issues or catch anything. I'm going to put my glue in there, and then I can fit it permanently. with a second clamp to hold that one in place. So that's the part of the bodywork done. So now that the glue's all dry on that, I can remove the clamps and then see what it's actually going to be like. So they look okay. Dash looks okay. Starting to feel like it's coming to a completion or nearing the end. So with the interior tub in, I'm happy with that. I think that looks okay. So yeah, that's the end of this video anyway, just showing the rest of it. So thank you for watching it. I hope you enjoyed it, and I shall see you next time.